Phil, what are the biggest obstacles that have held you back from being a Hollywood director?
Well, I'm still chasing that. Can't quite call myself a Hollywood director yet. So what is holding me back? Maybe location, I think. People say, and there's a kind of a pre-COVID and maybe, post-COVID answer to this about working from anywhere. But, I feel that it's hard to try and make big commercial film in a country that doesn't have a studio system, that doesn't seem to want to support that kind of filmmaking. And that's hard, when you think, well, how am I going to make that film? When there isn't funding, or there's nowhere to go to, or there's no one to pitch to, or there's no one to network with particularly that's going to help you make that film, because actually a lot of the film I want to make is funded by studios, is funded, stateside. So that feels like I'd say a frustration with being a British filmmaker. And you can really see why we lose talent, but we see a lot of people go across the pond, because unless you're wanting to make a particular type of film, which we do very well and we're very good at, which is maybe more art house leaning, that's maybe more, lower budget, kind of lower scale, that kind of thing, which, the films I very much enjoy watching, but the films I don't really want to make, and I feel like it's frustrating that on the one hand, it's very lucky that we have this kind of public money, lottery funding side of our industry, but also completely frustrating when you think, well, why aren't we trying to have a studio? Why aren't we trying to make more commercial fare? Why aren't we trying to make our John Wicks or our trilogies? Or, it's like we have, as in the UK, we made the Harry Potters, we make the Star Warses, we make the James Bonds. Like we have an amazing, from visual effects to crew to studios. Like, there's a reason why people come and film here, and great directors that are, from here as well. So it feels rather strange to have to, go to the studios, which feels like a million miles away, especially for someone, growing up and trying to do it and, not being able to jump on a plane, and not feeling like you have those connections yet. Before I had a manager and stuff over there, you kind of, it feels like another world. And then also there's nowhere you can go, to pitch your film, where actually someone could go and make it, and I feel that, maybe it's controversial to say, maybe it's not, but I just feel like, that public money, that the kind of BFI side of, filmmaking, is that we should be looking at trying to tell more stories that appeal to more people. And I know on paper it's very hard to know what makes money, what doesn't make money. So it's very hard to go down, to be too generalized about it. But, there are certain genres and certain stories that are going to appeal to a much wider audience versus another film that's only going to appeal to, a much smaller audience, in terms of not the multiplexes, not the mainstream kind of things. And yes, of course, things break out and they do, but to not actually explore those ideas or hear those pitches or just want to make that out and out action film or that out and out, I don't know why John Wick's in my head, but it's like, why couldn't we make John Wick in the UK? Why couldn't we have funded that and make that? There's no reason why we couldn't have made it. We're just not seemingly wanting to make that stuff. And that's frustrating, because I want to make films here. I want to, and I feel that sometimes the wool is pulled over our eyes of well, you are making stars, you are making James Bond, you are making Harry Potter. What are these amazing films? Yeah, but we don't have any ownership of them. We don't actually own them. We service them. and then we hand them back, So it would have been wonderful, for maybe some of our UK tax credit money that is helping bring those films here and get our crews and our people working, which is vitally important to our economy, but also maybe having a little slice of the pie for that. What is 1% of a Harry Potter franchise worth? And I'm talking of real 1%, not a Hollywood accounting 1%. What is that worth? Well, to us, that's the money to support filmmakers. That's money to support people to make more short films, to make more indie films, to take more risks. And I think what is frustrating as well is that maybe more as industry as a whole, but especially in this country, it's like, you feel like you can't fail. It's like that first feature needs to win Sundance or you're done. You know what I mean? It's like, hang on, where did that pressure come from? Like, we're all like trying to grow and nurture our filmmaking here. So it's a very, very rare thing that you make one thing, it's your very first thing, and you just win. Like, that's it. You've made it. That the chances of that are, I don't know what the statistical chances of that, but they're near impossible. So if that's impossible, what makes that more possible? Well, it's actually having funding and support to help filmmakers make more film, to grow. And so when they get that feature film, when they can make those films, then they have permission to fail. And and it's something actually Paul Greengrass talks a lot about, because he cut his teeth in documentaries and making films funny enough in my hometown in the Granada region, and he quite right said, like, a lot of them didn't work. And some of them weren't as good as they should have been, or like I learned a lot doing them. And this is Paul Greengrass. What happens if Paul Greengrass made one film and no one gave him another opportunity? What we would have been missing out on, So I think there's a real problem for me, and this has turned into a British film industry rant. But it does feel like that feels like my obstacle to, in inverted commas, say a Hollywood director in terms of making big mainstream fare. Obviously, the literal version, being a Hollywood director, is making a film in Hollywood. And what's stopping that is, well, a few things are stopping that, but not for want of trying. And there are things bubbling away that might make that happen. But again, that's only 15 plus years into doing this as a job. So it's that building those contacts and relationships and that trust, and so when you have that opportunity, you can grab it with both hands. So yeah, it's I just wish that we made more commercial film in this country, and we had ownership of the upside to then invest in more film. I feel like we have a film charity here and not a film business, and I feel that's the wrong mindset, and that can be quite frustrating, wanting to make commercial film.
And do you think, just wrapping up on this topic, but do you think, just having grown up in the UK, that it's kind of the grass is always greener? Myself, for a teenager, I loved the UK. I had a Union Jack t-shirt that I bought from a store. And I was just treasuring it, that it was from, Europe. And I think the grass is always greener, and I wasn't as much into the tentpole movies. So I'd rather watch Christopher Nolan's Following than Inception. But that's just because I grew up being surrounded by that. And I just wonder if it's just maybe just a personal taste as well, just because it seems so unique and special.
Yeah, it is a personal taste, and the grass is greener. But it goes back to the films that I watched as a kid that made me want to be a filmmaker, and they were big American films, and so now I want to make those films. Plus, certain things in American accent are way cooler when you write them in a script than someone in a British accent. Like, you know, the only person that can get away with that is, you know, is like villains in like a Bond film. But it just comes down to that sensibility of I go to movies for escapism, and also to be moved. And if filmmakers, very clever filmmakers, can slide in, you know, interesting thought or analysis or comment on society, a problem, the world, then wonderful. You know, that's the icing. That is, you know, as a filmmaker, the bond probably that pulls it together. But as an audience member, it's like the icing on the cake to make you think about that kind of stuff. But it just comes back to that, you know, I aspire to make, you know, commercial film in wide releases to try and appeal to as many people as possible, as opposed to quieter film that, you know, are maybe more insular, you know. Yeah, but that's just my preference.